moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I get the question from time to time, like, how much knowledge do you need to have about the comic industry in order to, succeed in it, in order to do a lot of things in it? And I've talked about this before. The answer is not much, really. You don't need a lot of insider information. You don't need a lot of background knowledge in order to succeed in comics. And I know this is heresy to a lot of people who want to tell you and want you to believe that it's a very complex, very difficult business to parse, that it's that industry knowledge is very valuable. And of course people will say this, and they'll want you to believe it, because particularly if you've any job, think about it, if you've done any job for any length of time, the last thing that anybody wants to hear is that they're easily replaceable, that the information they have, if a relatively smart person just applies himself, they can pretty much figure it out. But the reality is most jobs are like that, and really smart, really successful people lean into that fact. What I mean by that is, if have you ever met the person at work, and I'm sure many of you have, where you basically pretend that your industry specific knowledge, your very proprietary knowledge, is so critical and so relevant only to you, that only you can figure out how to do your job. Or let me put it a different way. Maybe you've worked with somebody who is like, they make out like their job is so incredibly complex, so incredibly hard, so detailed, like nobody could possibly figure out this shit except for them. The crazy part is these people are generally annoying. They're not people you like to deal with at work. They're not helpful. They're not people who drive business forward. They're people who generally are obstacles that you try and get around. And it feels like everybody knows that they're hanging on to a fallacy, that their job is actually could be done by a computer or a mop and a bucket at some point. But they're making out that only they know how to use a key to unlock a door at 4:30 in the afternoon that makes a blue light turn red. And if you think I'm giving some kind of outlandish, weird analogy here to this, I'm not. I think most of you who have worked in the corporate world probably have come across somebody like this. Somebody who maybe they put data into a spreadsheet, and then the spreadsheet has a pivot table that they've been doing this job for like 25 years. And the reality is that job could be automated. But nobody wants to fire the person because they've been around for 25 years and they probably don't cost very much and everything else. But eventually that person becomes a nuisance. They have a big ego, and they become a pain in the ass to work with. And eventually they do get fired or replaced, and they replace that person's job with a computer, macro or script. And everybody's a little bit happier. Oftentimes those people survive at companies, so they just kind of keep their mouth shut and don't become an asshole to work with. And in a lot of cases, aspects of the comic book industry are not necessarily replaceable with a mop and a bucket, but they're easy to learn. I've talked to a lot of people in comics, and for whatever reason, people who are in comics or people who have recently left comics, they almost all tell me the same thing. I know a lot I've been on the inside, so I know a lot more than you do. I mean, sure, maybe you do, but here's the thing. If the comic industry is, by its nature, not functioning very well and or a dumpster fire, then I don't know that I value that industry's specific knowledge. I've had people tell me, it's like, oh my God, it's completely screwed up here. Have you been around the Marvel offices? They're completely screwed up. Nobody knows what they're doing. They're not communicating. It's really bad. It's like one hand doesn't know what the other's doing. The editors are morons. It's just like they can't figure out distribution to save their life. I'm really smart about this insider information. I know more about it than certainly you do, and I've got a lot of deep insider knowledge. I'm like, but hang on, you just told me that the company is operating like a complete dumpster fire, And now you're telling me I should respect the fact that you know how that dumpster fire works. I'm, I'm good. I know how to start a dumpster fire. A little bit of gasoline and a match will do the trick. I don't need help in that. And I've told you before, I've gone out drinking with editors and various people, and they'll talk about like, oh my God, it's so complex. I have to send an email, and then I get an email, and then I have to check with another email, and then I, have to file a report, and then the comic business is so different. It's so stupid. It's like, oh, it's backwards. It hasn't evolved since 1970. We're still doing things super old fashioned. I'm an expert at it. It's like, cool. You've just told me you're an expert at stupid. Unfortunately, that's how I translate it. I think about innovation a lot, and I think about what it's going to take to kind of grow new business models and get more money and get more distribution, everything else. And I'll tell you flat out, this is my perspective, and I understand it probably doesn't fit, I don't know, most of the people listening, certainly most of the professionals listening to this. I don't really care how it's worked in the past, because it hasn't worked particularly well in the past. Now, if you want to come tell me that you are somebody who does marketing channel or omni-channel or distribution for Scholastic, I feel like there's something I can learn from you. I'm quite interested. If you're going to tell me, how pages move through editorial at Marvel, I'm good. I'm sure you have more insider information. I'm sure you've seen more of the cockroaches and the dirt on the wall, but that information is not particularly valuable to me. If you think about somebody who's coming into, innovate in technology space, if you've ever been part of design planning or any kind of, business realization process, if you've ever been part of that, what you'll find out is that by and large, people like consultants or people who come into that, they do not go, hey, I need to gain a super deep understanding of how broken this system is. They want to know what's wrong about it, but that process typically is very quick. And the advice that comes back to the company, if you're a consultant trying to improve processes, is generally dump all of this crap. It is dragging you down. It is an anchor on your business. Cut it, detach it, fire everybody, like whatever you got to do. Jettison this archaic nonsense because it's going to tank your company. That's typically what happens. So I don't know. To me, and this has been, if you go into other businesses, if you go into technology, you go into pharma, you go into kind of other sectors, domain-specific knowledge is often considered the albatross around the neck of progress. It's considered the thing that's going to keep you from being successful. In comics, however, people wear it like a moronic badge of honor. And I think if I'm giving advice to kind of, for one thing, if you're hearing this and you're thinking, oh my God, I told Perch at one point, that I'm an expert in something. He thinks I'm a dumbass. No, I don't. Well, maybe a little bit, but not really. Probably a little bit. But I'm joking. But you can't let this idea that you, quote unquote, know how it all works, or you have kind of the secret story inside, mean much of anything if you're looking at future growth for your future value. Now, if your goal is to like tell some, hidden dirt stories about what's gone on in comics, then sure, that information is quite valuable. If you've ever gone out with, David Gabriel, and he's thrown up on you because he's gotten too drunk at a bar, hypothetically, then, you've got some good stories to tell. And that kind of knowledge can regale, you can regale an audience around a fun bar at some point over shots, and everybody will laugh and find it amazing. Maybe you go on a podcast at some point, or you wash out of the industry and you can tell lots of stories about the crazy, nonsensical BS that went on, and it's funny. It's great for YouTube. But it's not good for, actually innovating and driving a business. And what strikes me about comics, and this is the thing that, I'm doing this video by myself here in the car. This is one of those videos that I'd love to do with, some actual people in comics, but I don't know anybody would ever want to go on the record having this particular conversation. The comment is, if you're trying to move things forward, if you're trying to, find more money, if you're trying to stabilize yourself, why do you keep looking backward into the broken way the industry works? Think about it. If it's broken, you should be running away from that broken process as fast as you can. You should be trying to get to, better. You should be trying to get to healthy. You should be trying to get to a state where, things improve, where, you should be trying to get to new. But the crazy part about comics, and this is legitimately a question I have, it's like, I'll give you a very specific example. Okay? At Marvel Comics, a guy named Bob Harris worked at Marvel, made the genius decision to take Chris Claremont, a pretty epic, legendary writer who had built a entire franchise of the X-Men titles, off the X-Men books, in order to make, in his mind, Jim Lee and some of the artists happy. Now, curiously enough, Jim Lee didn't seem to want Chris Claremont off the book, but Bob Harris thought it would be a good idea to jettison the writer of the past, whatever it was, 15 years or more, a long time, in favor of an artist who'd done, in fairness, great work. I mean, Jim Lee had done great X-Men work, and lots of people respect and love what he did, but he'd been on that title for what, like 2 years? I don't know, not much time. He'd certainly generated a lot of sales, taking nothing away from Jim Lee's artwork. But if Jim Lee was not in Bob Harris's office, and according to Jim Lee and Chris Claremont, they both seem to unify in this story, Jim Lee was not in Harris's office saying, hey, you've got to fire this Chris Claremont guy. I won't work with him anymore. That conversation didn't occur, yet Harris thought it would be a good idea to do that, and or at least make his life uncomfortable enough that Claremont would walk. And then proceed to not have a good plan to the point that we're going to put Byrne on the book writing a little bit, and then we're just going to kind of get rid of Byrne, and then we're just going to be confused for a long time. That's the Bob Harris legacy, which hit, and then promptly Jim Lee and a lot of the, of course, the Image guys all split, and then Jim Lee was left holding a bag full of just complete crap that nobody could do anything with. And, then the company went into bankruptcy, and just a lot of terrible decisions were made, and then a lot of other kind of writers and artists talk about how, absolute, garbage Bob Harris was and how terrible he was to work with. And so he gets washed out of Marvel. Depending on who you listen to, was fired or left of his own accord after his life was made very uncomfortable. One of those, whatever you want to pick. So what would be the natural outcome of a story like that? If you guessed DC hired Bob Harris to run, big aspects of their company, congratulations, that is what happened. But who in their right mind would have made that choice? Think of, you have a clear history of a terrible set of decisions leading to, a bad, outcome for the company. And you think to yourself, well, but Bob Harris has a lot of industry-specific knowledge. He knows how it works. I mean, he knows how to destroy it. Why would you do such a thing? Why in the world would you do it? And the reason is, the reason why you do that, because you think that hiring somebody with domain knowledge who knows how it all works is a good plan, even when how it worked was, a near bankruptcy and complete cratering of the company, tons of people who despise the guy because he doesn't know what he's doing, and just a series of bad decisions. Yet we're going to overlook all of those bad decisions and disaster for the company in favor of, well, this guy's been in comics, he knows how it works. The clear outcome of this is, who cares that he knows how it works? He clearly does not know how it works well. There's a big difference between I know how to do this job and I know how to succeed in this job. And if your track record is what it, so Bob Harris, of course, and I don't mean to mock, people who have been kind of run out, but Harris, of course, was removed from DC in some of the, the culling that happened over the last 2 years. And here's the thing. I feel very confident that at some near point, we're going to hear that Boom or IDW or one of these companies is going to be like, we've hired industry veteran Bob Harris. He knows how comics work. I feel very confident. In fact, this is where I may be stupid because I don't know how it works. And Harris could already be working at one of these places. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he's already working at one of these places. And I'm just like Valiant or somebody picked him up and I forgot about it. And am I saying that the guy deserves to be on the street, homeless, starving? Of course not. I mean, he deserves to make money and have a living. And if a company hired him and said, "Yeah, we know that some bad decisions were made, but we think that this, and this, it's worth another chance," or he auditioned for the job and he said that, "Hey, I want to do things in a different way, and maybe I know how the comic industry works and I know how to really screw it up. So I know how to do it differently. I know that I won't do what I did before." I mean, who knows? There's lots of reasons why it could still be a good hire. But more often than not, when I talk to people at in comics, they place a huge emphasis and value on quote unquote, "I know more than you." That's almost always their phrase. "Well, I know the industry better than you do because I worked inside of it." And to that I say, so? Seriously. That may sound arrogant to you, but unless you're going to tell me that you worked inside of Viz and you helped do some of the licensing deals that is now making you a crap ton of money in Mongo, or you worked in Scholastic, or you worked in Webtoon, and you helped drive core aspects of the business, or hell, you worked in Marvel and you helped synergize aspects of their relationship with licensing to create a solid business plan. I mean, like, just working quote in comics or knowing what it's like inside, to me, is fairly worthless. I get if it depends on what you're in for. If you're saying that you've got some good gossip and some good stories about where all the bodies are buried and some hilarious tales, then I will be happy to have a beer with you and you can tell your stories, and I'm sure we're all going to have a great laugh, and I will buy that beer. That'll be fun. But that is not a reason for you to run anything. And being a domain expert in bullshit is not that. There's no value. There's no intrinsic value to that. I'm sorry. It has to be said. Being an expert in screwing up is not a reason for you to run something. This is my bias. I think that running a company, being in a management position, you should, and I know this is a radical, crazy idea, you should have shown the ability to be successful at some point in your resume, in your background. If you have no track record of success, I don't know what to. I mean, like, just being there, being in the room, doesn't make you an expert of anything, except maybe funny stories. I don't know why. It's weird, and I don't know if any of you have had the same experience, but I hear this a lot, particularly from editors. They want to tell me, "Oh, I've got." They always want to compare it to me. I know a lot more than you do. Cool. If we go on Jeopardy together and the category is insider comic knowledge, yeah, you will probably win. I, but who cares? And if we're talking about innovation and transformation of the comic industry, then we need to start thinking about things that are successful, things that are going to change the model, things that are going to evolve it, improve it, innovate on it. Not here's something that here's the way the comic industry has worked for the last 50 years. That look back approach. If you take what I'm saying right here and you apply it to, again, any functional field, try and go into, say, you're applying for a job at Amazon, right? For somebody in their technical leadership transformation area. Okay. And in your interview process, you say, well, I used to work at IBM. I know how IBM works. I'm very, very well versed in in IBM. If you go in and say, oh, it's a I'm a full stack developer. I'm applying for a job at I don't know, some Oculus, a Facebook company. You're applying for a job at Tesla or SpaceX, and you say, you know what I'm really good at? Linux. Actually, that's not fair. Linux can still have some value. Let's see. I'm really good at Fortran. That's what I'm really good at. I'm really good at Perl. I can write Perl scripts like nobody's business. I know how it works. The person's going to look at you and go, well, maybe that shows that you have some discipline in writing a language. But if that's all you're hanging your hat on, I don't care. That's a dead language. We've moved past it. The world has evolved. The fact that you're an expert on something that is, in the past doesn't terribly interest me. Yet for comics, people continue to go to it. I don't understand why, to be honest. Anyway, well, that's enough of this rant. I just, people are going to read all kinds of things into this video. There's nothing to read into it. I was pretty explicit. I said exactly what I meant. There's not a hidden story or like a Perch is jabbing some unknown person. I said exactly what I meant. Thanks for listening.